Let's get started again. We are at 11:07 Minnesota time, and our next presenters are from the Czech Republic, Jan Šiška and Zuzana Horálková from Charles University. So I'll let them introduce themselves and the presentation.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending wherever you are around the globe. It's my pleasure to present our study about the situation in employment of people with disability in the European Union. As Renata said, we are from the Czech Republic, the Charles University. I have been working in the disability field for the European Union and the Commission over one decade. I'm currently in Minnesota, by the way, trying to adapt to the new time zone. My colleague, Zuzana Horálková, she is in the Czech Republic, and she's my PhD student, and I will ask her to briefly introduce herself. Please, Zuzko, can you say a few words about yourself? I don't have any response from Zuzana. Can you hear me, Zuzana?
Yeah, and it looked like Susanna went offline.
Okay, so she will join us later. Well, first of all, thank you, Renata, Nick, and Brian for organizing this important forum. It seems the international community is sort of facing difficult times, and I believe it's very important to make efforts to stay engaged in international collaboration and to retain our values around human rights, particularly addressing the disability issues. So in the session today, we will try to briefly introduce the situation in the European Union. In other words, we will not talk about the situation in the particular country of the European Union, about the Czech Republic, but we will try to give you an overall picture about the European Union. We will also mention some trends and challenges in the engagement of persons with disabilities employment in the European Union. We will also mention conclusions, and some recommendations. What kind of data sources we are using for the presentation? First of all, it's the data sources from the European Disability Expertise, which is kind of a significant network of European disability experts. I'm serving as a disability expert for the Czech Republic, and the thematical reports are available online, same as the legislation for each European country is also available online, and you can use these resources with your students or as in other ways. So the second source of information is the EU statistics. The statistics on income and living conditions is called the EU SILC. Few words about the European Union. The European Union's got currently 27 member states, about 500 million inhabitants, which is almost 6% of the total population. There are 4 core freedoms for the European citizens. One is free movement of goods, free movement of persons, free movement of capitals, free movement of services, including services related to social services. The European statistic indicates that currently only half of the more than 40 million persons with disabilities of working age in the EU is employed. So it's the employment disability has been an issue. Well, you can see the map of the European Union, the countries in purple, these are the full member states. The countries in green, these are the member states which have some limitations in terms of the free movement of people, which is called the Schengen area. These countries are not full members of the Schengen areas. I will just give a little bit more information about the policy content. I will briefly introduce three kind of frameworks which are very closely related to disability and employment. First is the European the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the Employment Equality Directive, the European Pillar of Social Rights, and Strategy for the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I will not go into details. My aim is to give you some kind of a broader understanding about how the European Union is engaged in our team. So first of all, the European Union as an international organization, same as all the European Union member states, ratified the CRPD. And the CRPD states that the person with disabilities have the right to the opportunity to gain in living by working freely chosen or accepted in a labor market and work environment that is open, inclusive, accessibility to persons with disabilities. All the member states, they are obliged, or they do have duty to implement the European Convention to their national legal frameworks. So it's not only a kind of strategy, but it's obligatory for all the member states to translate the convention into domestic law. The second important document and legally binding is the Employment Equality Directive from the 2000, number 78. And this Equality Directive protects against discrimination in employment on the grounds of disability, age, sexual orientation, religion, or belief. I think what is also worth it to mention that the Employment Equality Directive requires employers to provide so-called reasonable accommodation for persons with disabilities to facilitate their work. The Employment Equality Directive is also a must, and all the member states have to implement this equality directive to domestic law. So, for example, the Czech Republic has now a special law which protects people with disabilities against discrimination. Of course, it's not a particular law for disability issues, but it's a kind of a general law on discrimination also in employment. So that's the Employment Equality Directive. The third document I would mention is the European Pillar of Social Rights from 2017. It's a strategic document. And in the Principle 16, it says that people with disabilities have the right to income support that ensures living in dignity, services that enable them to participate in the labor market and in society and work environment adapted to their needs. The European Pillar of Social Right, it is not a legally binding document, but it's a kind of a guidance for the member states in terms of making the work environment accessible for persons with disabilities. The last policy document is the Strategy for the Rights of Persons with Disabilities 2021-2030, which is structured according to the European CRPD articles, and the part of it is the employment package, and the improvement of the labor market outcomes for persons with disabilities is one of the 7 flagships which are part of the strategy. The European Union have a number of strategies. This kind of strategies it used to be for 5 years. Now the strategy is for 10 years. Now I will in the number of the next slides we will talk briefly about the current situation in the employment or engagement of people with disabilities in employment, and I do hope that Zuzana is now connected, and
yes,
Zuzana,
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Good. Yes, we can hear you, Zuzana. If you can just say a few words about yourself briefly,
Sure,
and then we
sure.
can go back to our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm very sorry for the beginning, but suddenly my audio stopped to work for some reason. So I needed to reconnect to my iPhone, but it's okay now. So as for my short introduction, I am originally special education needs teacher, but now I'm a PhD candidate in the field of trauma-informed approaches in education for students with disabilities, and mostly with intellectual disabilities. So I think that's enough for me. And now I would like to draw your attention to some trends and challenges related to engagement of persons with disabilities in employment across the European Union. So first of all, a crucial aspect to consider is the employment rate and also the disability employment gap. So the disability employment gap is actually the difference between the employment rate of people with some or severe disabilities from the age of 20 until 64 and those without disabilities. Also, a person is supposed or is considered employed if he has worked either full-time or part-time for more than 5 months in the last 12 months. So regarding the data, it is important to keep in mind that the estimates can vary a little bit depending on the survey used, and there are 2 key European statistical surveys focused on the labor market trends. The first one is labor force survey. It tends to capture a population with more severe disabilities, which leads to a little bit lower recorded employment rates. And then there is EU statistics on income and living conditions, and it includes a higher proportion of people with moderate disabilities, which leads to higher employment rates. And that's the one that we present the most, as it provides also a more recent insight. So as you can see, in 2023, the employment rate of persons with disabilities was 54.3%. In 2012, the rate was about 46.6%. So there is a notable increase. But as for the disability gap, it has slightly decreased in the last decade, and it is now approximately 22 percentage points. And it was about 22.7 in 2014. So despite the gradual progress, these figures indicate that there are still some barriers to full inclusion of persons with disabilities in the labor market. Next, please. In the following figure, we can observe a significant employment gap in all member states of European Union. The largest gap could be found in Bulgaria, it's almost 40%, then in Croatia over 39%, and Ireland about 37%. And the lowest employment gaps could be found in Spain, Portugal, or Switzerland, all around 14%. Next. So another challenge I would like to mention is sheltered employment for persons with disabilities. Sheltered employment can actually serve as an alternative to the open labor market, and it covers different types of models designed to support employment of people with disabilities, usually when they have limited access to the open labor market or require additional assistance. And at the European level, there is only legal definition of sheltered employment, and it appears in the general block exemption regulation. It says that sheltered employment is an undertaking where at least 30% of workers 50% of workers are workers with disabilities. However, some national legislations set higher minimum percentages, for example, 70% in Spain, or they adopt thresholds according to workers' support needs, as in Slovenia or Poland. But what are the downsides of sheltered employment? So first of all, it's limited career development. Also, wages in these workshops are generally lower. Also, there are fewer opportunities for promotion. In some countries, persons with disabilities working in sheltered workshops are not even considered like regular employees, and that kind of excludes them from minimum wage rights and also standard labor protection. The second challenge or downside can be segregation, because many of sheltered workshops don't effectively facilitate transition to open labor market, therefore, a lot of persons with disabilities, and especially those with severe ones, remain outside the open labor market, and they rely on sheltered employment. And the third challenge is lack of data and also lack of monitoring and evaluation. There is a huge inconsistency in data collection, and the mechanisms of monitoring are very different in member states. Which makes it quite difficult to measure the success of transition from sheltered to open employment, and also the data are hard to compare. Unfortunately, in some countries, is the share of individuals with disabilities employed in sheltered workshops quite high. So, for example, in Germany, there are around 3/4 of people with disabilities that work in sheltered workshops, and many of them not easily transit, or there is not easy transition to open labor market positions. Next, please. So the third challenge I would like to mention is early school leaving. In general, early school leavers are individuals aged 18 to 24 who have completed at most a lower secondary education, and they are not engaged in any further education or training. Across the European Union, the total average rate of early school leavers is 10.2%. And we see a predominantly male profile with rates that are about 3 or almost 4% higher compared to women. Although the rate of early school leavers has shown a decrease of more than 4% between 2010 and 2023, so in the last decade, the numbers still exceed the EU target, which is for fewer than 9% of pupils to leave education and training early until 2030. That should be achieved. Early leavers also face many challenges when entering the labor market. Research consistently shows that they are at higher risk of unemployment, underemployment, or low quality work. And as education has become increasingly important for employers when hiring, early school leavers often lack the qualification and skills required to access more stable and also higher paying jobs. Next, please. So in the 2023, only 47.4% of early school leavers in the European Union were employed. Around 30.5% were not employed, but they expressed desire to work, which indicates that they kind of struggle to secure a suitable job opportunities. Across European Union, there are 8 member states that report employment rate among their early school leavers over 50%. But on the other end of the spectrum, there are countries like Croatia, Lithuania, or, for example, Slovakia, with 70 and even more percent of people of early school leavers that are unemployed. And next, please. And the following figure shows the share of early school leavers by disability status. In 2022, there was a significant gap between the early school leavers with and without disabilities in every member state. The highest one can be found in Romania, where about 65% of persons with disabilities are early school leavers. The average of European Union for people without disabilities is 8.4%, and it is about 22.2% among people without disabilities, which signifies a gap of about 14% by 2022. So to improve the employment situation of people with disabilities, it is kind of necessary to address these trends and challenges that I've just mentioned. Thank you, Jan, and if you can take it over.
Thank you, Zuzana, for the brief introduction to the situation in the European Union in terms of figures and trends. Now I'll try to summarize as briefly as possible what the European Union is aiming to do. There are 6 key areas of interest or aims. First of all, there should be a guidance for the member states, guidance developed for the member states to improve the accessibility of employment and career guidance services. In practice, it means that the staff working in the labor offices, as we call them, should get intensive training to be able to effectively respond to the particular needs of persons with disabilities. So that's the one measure. Secondly, the European Union should produce a catalog of positive actions, recommendations for the member states how to combat stereotypes related to disabilities. The third area is ensuring reasonable accommodation. Reasonable accommodation I mentioned in one of the previous slides related to the European directive. And again, the European Union is working on the guidelines for reasonable accommodation at work, which should be targeted at employers, how to make the workplace accessible in terms of mobility or the work hours or other aspects of the job. The fourth area is the retaining persons with disabilities in employment. The fifth is again preparing guidelines for effective vocational rehabilitation schemes related to frequent diseases and types of accidents. The last area is connected to what Zuzana is mentioned about the tendency still kind of the sheltered workshops dominating in the employment opportunities for persons with disabilities, and this aim is to look at how to support people transiting from the sheltered workshops to the open market opportunities. What are the conclusions? I think it's clear. It's clear that the European Union has been paying attention to disability issues in employment. There have been also sort of a positive trends demonstrating that, for example, reducing disability gap. However, the positive change is not that huge. The European Union is increasingly focusing on a capacity-based approach that supports the engagement of people with disabilities in the open labor market. And I think that what should be also mentioned that from our opinion, meaning the European disability expertise, the EU employment strategy is incomplete in addressing the transition from education to employment. And there seems to be a room for improvement as regards the involvement of different actors who often operate in silos. In other words, it means that the policies are rather fragmented, for example, focusing only on education or employment, and this kind of an holistic approach is sort of missing. What we again recommend for the European Commission as the European disability expertise, that the European member states should have detailed targets and indicators how to monitor the outcomes of the policies. There should be also a dialogue, consultations between the different stakeholders, and we need more data and research and transparency, which also Zuzana mentioned. So thank you very much. It's the European Union has been full of a large number of policies. For example, the employment policies. You have about 150 documents which are related to disability and employment. So the European Union is also facing this kind of not necessarily crisis, but challenges how to simplify the processes. So we are open to questions. Thank you very much for your attention, and yeah, so the floor is open to questions.
Yeah, thank you, Jan and Zuzana. One of the things, that's interesting about your work, that you cover a large territory. You cover the whole European Union, so that gives a lot of good comparisons. So yeah, please, any questions or comments for my Czech colleagues?
So I will ask a question. This is Karen Herman in Duluth, Minnesota. And my question is, these are great recommendations. Where do parents and guardians and individuals that support people with disabilities, are they championing these changes, or are they content with where things are with today's environment?
So if I understand your question, it's about the engagement of parents and persons with disabilities shaping the policies, and yeah,
correct.
is it? Yeah. Yes, the kind of a government of the European Union is the European Commission. It's it's a very brief description, and the European Commission always welcomes kind of a feedback from the European disability organizations, and they do get regular grants from the European Commission. So, and one of the key organizations, the European Disability Forum, which is kind of a partner for the European Commission. So to answer your question, yes, the parents or the disability, the people, the persons with disabilities and their organizations, they are closely engaged. However, talking about parents, I think there is a limited voice of parents who represent their children, particularly with the children with intellectual developmental disabilities. But I just don't want to talk against the Inclusion Europe, which is my very close organization, which has been working in this field. But from my opinion, I think that the voice of parents could be stronger than it is.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Jan or Zuzana?
Hey, Jan, this is Tim. I'm just wondering about shelter programming in Europe. Are those shelter programs funded by the government, or how are they funded in Europe?
Yes, thank you, Tim, for your question. It depends who sort of owns the sheltered workshops, but in most cases, the significant income of the sheltered workshops is from the state. So they would not exist without the outcome from the national governments. The problem is that, from my opinion, it's relatively easy to sort of to supervise the sheltered workshops from the national government's perspective. So if you give money to the sheltered workshops, it's much easier to supervise them or control them rather than giving kind of financial support to individual employer. So I think that's the one of the reasons why the sheltered workshops been kind of a priority way of employing persons with disabilities. Kind of maybe the practical reason, but there are other reasons, of course. But yes, to answer your question, yes, the sheltered workshops, they are heavily supported by the national governments, the member states. Yeah. Thank you, Tim.